Okay, let's unpack this. We are about to dive deep,
Mhm.
and I mean really, truly below the surface of human interaction. We're going to try and move past all the simplified stories, the polite facades and the easy labels we usually rely on to explain why people do what they do. And that includes ourselves, of course.
It always includes ourselves. And the premise we're dissecting today is, well, it's probably one of the most profound in human history. It's this powerful illusion that most people, most of the time, are operating under.
The illusion of control.
Precisely. The idea that they are masters of their own destiny, guided purely by, free will and perfectly rational thought. But the reality, as uncovered by centuries of history, psychology, observation, it's just not the full picture.
Not even close.
Our behavior, whether it's profoundly ordinary or strangely inconsistent or even outright destructive, it's overwhelmingly steered by these deep, predictable, elemental forces.
So these are like the fundamental operating code of humanity.
That's a great way to put it. We're talking about the laws of human nature.
So this isn't just a discussion about, say, managing your temper or being a bit nicer to your neighbor.
No, not at all.
This deep dive is built on some really solid source material that synthesizes historical evidence, psychological research, and these incredible biographical case studies. I mean, we're talking about everyone from Pericles in ancient Athens to the catastrophic implosions of modern figures.
And what that does is it creates a kind of a code book for you, the listener, a code book for deciphering behavior.
A code book, I like that.
And our mission today is to grant you access to that code. Historically, we've kind of groped in the dark, relying on morality or mythology to explain why people act so foolishly sometimes. This code book is, well, it's brutally realistic.
So what happens when you get this code? What changes?
By operating with this new level of awareness, you can achieve three, I think, fundamental shifts in how you relate to the world.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first one, and I think this is the most instantly liberating, is that it transforms you into a calmer, more strategic observer. Well, look, being around other people, especially in high-stakes environments like work or family, it naturally stirs up our deepest anxieties, right?
Mm-hmm.
How are we being perceived?
We take offense constantly.
Constantly. But once you internalize the fact that people are almost always dealing with their own complex, rooted emotional drama, desires, fears, disappointments that often predate meeting you by decades, you stop taking everything so personally.
You realize you just walked into their movie.
Exactly. You realize you often just crossed their path at a convenient moment and became the target for their pre-existing internal script. It's really not about you.
That is a powerful realization. It gives you instant distance.
It really does. So the second shift is maybe more practical. It's about gaining the crucial skill of accurately judging people's true worth, their loyalty, their conscientiousness.
Which we're terrible at, right? Initially.
We are awful at it. We make these quick judgments that just satisfy our own internal needs. We want to believe the charming person is also a reliable person.
The halo effect.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. This codebook forces you to slow down, to mistrust that initial charisma, and to become a master interpreter of the subtle cues people are constantly, and I mean constantly, emitting.
And that's the real kicker here, isn't it? The ability to gauge a person's deep-seated character before their behavior can harm you. That has to be one of the most valuable skills you can acquire.
I would argue it is the most valuable.
It helps you avoid those disastrous hires that sink your projects, or the toxic romantic partnerships that derail your life.
Or those miserable business alliances that cost you everything.
Okay, so what's the third shift?
The third shift is true empowerment. It's identifying and outthinking the toxic types who will inevitably cross your path.
And we're not just talking about cartoon villains here.
No, not at all. We mean the subtly aggressive, the deeply envious, or the masterfully manipulative types. They're very sophisticated. They don't wear a warning label.
In fact, they usually wear the opposite. They seem charming, reasonable.
Even saintly. They use flattery and conformity to disarm us. So when their ugly behavior finally emerges, we feel blindsided. We feel betrayed.
But the laws teach you how to see the patterns in advance.
Yes. And that becomes your greatest, earliest defense against them. You learn how to avoid them, or if you can't, how to strategize against their predictable patterns.
So if we synthesize all this, what this really means is it's a move from being a passive slave to your own nature.
Being tossed around by momentary feelings and the chaos of others.
To actively taking charge of your destiny. We're moving past the surface stories and heading straight to the root source of all human action.
That's the goal.
All right, so the core of this deep dive starts right here. It's with this central struggle, this internal battle that really defines every single human life.
It's the constant battle between our emotional animal nature and our potential for sustained, genuine rationality.
The rider and the horse.
The rider and the horse, we'll get to that. But first, let's talk about our susceptibility to the moods and emotions of those around us. This idea of emotional contagion.
Right.
This emotional sweep is not a modern thing. It is primitive. In our deep past, this high permeability to emotion was an essential survival mechanism. It's what helped bind hunter-gatherer groups together.
So they could feel collective joy
Or shared grief, or, and this is the most important part, instantaneous collective alarm in the face of danger.
And we still carry that hardwiring today. That's why we unconsciously imitate others, or we desire what they possess. We get swept up in mass feelings.
Think about that primal urge to check the room when someone gasps or laughs loudly. It's pure instinct. You have to see what's going on.
And that instinct is now being, well, ruthlessly exploited.
Absolutely. While that contagion served a purpose on the savannah, it becomes a huge liability in the modern world, especially with digital platforms.
You mean social media?
Social media has heightened this permeability to an insane degree. The viral effect isn't just about, kittens and dance challenges. It's often a rapid, unthinking spread of outrage.
Or panic.
Mhm.
Or moral fervor.
And manipulative figures, whether they're political leaders or corporate marketers, they understand this mechanism perfectly. They know how to bypass our rational thought and target the limbic system directly.
Creating mass movements or market bubbles.
Built entirely on manufactured shared emotion. We imagine we're acting based on solid reasoning, but often we're completely unaware of how deeply group emotions are affecting our political choices, our financial decisions, even our opinions on trivial things.
So beyond that emotional piece, there are other forces from our deep past that shape our everyday actions.
Yes, a few key ones. For instance, the necessity of the social mask. Our need to wear masks to disguise our true impulses. It's absolutely essential for smooth social functioning.
I mean, if we acted on every impulse and spoke our minds truthfully.
We would offend, alienate, or maybe even terrify almost everyone we encountered. Society would collapse.
And then there's this other force, one that's so powerful, but we often fail to acknowledge its deep history. And that's the continual need to rank ourselves, to measure our self-worth through status.
This drive isn't just culturally taught, it is observable everywhere. You see it in all surviving hunter-gatherer cultures. Who's the best hunter, the most respected elder? You see it with crystal clarity in the social dynamics of chimpanzees. We are constantly, unconsciously assessing who is above us and who is below us.
And that ties into our ancient tribal instincts.
It does. This causes us to reflexively divide the world into insiders, people who think like us, look like us, believe like us, and outsiders.
And that in-group, out-group divide, especially when it's fueled by social media echo chambers, is one of the most powerful mechanisms driving modern conflict.
We have to stop dismissing these forces as just personality quirks or bad manners.
Yeah.
They are deeply structurally primitive.
So to really understand this core conflict, we need to look at the brain itself, the evolutionary context, the 3 layers.
Exactly. This is the actual mechanical basis for irrationality. The oldest layer is the reptilian brain, deep in the brainstem. It controls all our automatic instinctive responses.
Fight, flight, feeding.
Reproduction. It's pure survival. Then, above that, you have the old mammalian or limbic system. This is the powerhouse of feeling and raw emotion, fear, rage, pleasure, pain. This system processes sensory information and governs the source of most of our immediate powerful impulses.
And then, on top of all that, the newest, most complex layer, the neocortex.
Right. The seat of advanced cognition, language, abstract thought. But here's the crucial part. Emotions originate as a physical arousal, a chemical reaction that starts in the limbic system, designed to capture our attention and motivate action.
But the limbic brain is faster.
Much faster. It's older, and it's far more powerful in terms of raw energy than the neocortex. So in a moment of stress or perceived threat, the limbic system just floods the brain with hormones like adrenaline or cortisol.
And it effectively hijacks the neocortex.
It hijacks it. Sophisticated reasoning becomes nearly impossible in that moment.
Which brings us directly to that rider and the horse analogy you mentioned.
It does. The horse represents our emotional nature. It has tremendous energy, passion, power. But without guidance, it's wild, unpredictable, prone to, to catastrophic trouble.
And the rider is our thinking self,
Mm-hmm.
the neocortex.
The rider is our thinking self. So rationality means the rider is strong, holding the reins firmly, guiding that horse, and turning that powerful animal energy into a productive, focused purpose. But in the default human state, the horse dominates. It runs wild, and the rider is barely holding on, sometimes not even aware they're being dragged along for the ride.
And that default state, for most people, is living entirely on the surface. We're emotional, simplified, and reactive.
And often profoundly unaware of the deeper roots driving our sudden anger or our compulsive insecurity or our deep-seated desires. We settle for the easiest, most convenient, and most flattering story to tell ourselves about why we do things.
But the real kicker here, you're saying, is that the most powerful high-grade irrationality doesn't just come from immediate stress.
No, it stems from repressed desires, fears, and unmet needs. These usually trace all the way back to early childhood traumas or trigger points.
So what happens? How does that work in the present?
An event in your present life, a subtle rejection, a perceived slight, a hint of disapproval. It hits that deep, stored memory of the original emotional experience.
And that releases the powerful chemicals and hormones associated with that old memory.
Yes, and the reaction you have in the present moment is completely, totally disproportionate to the reality of what just happened.
Let's break that mechanism down with a concrete example. I think that would help.
Okay. We often see this in, say, a man who had a very distant narcissistic mother. As an infant, she was physically present, but psychologically unavailable, inconsistent. So the child learned to fear abandonment.
A deep primal fear.
A primal fear. So years later, as an adult, if a partner or a colleague expresses even minor disapproval, maybe it's constructive criticism, maybe just a distracted look, it hits that ancient trigger point.
He doesn't just experience minor criticism.
Not at all. He experiences the full-blown, terrifying rush of emotion from his childhood. A sense of imminent, total abandonment and betrayal.
So he overreacts.
Massively. He might start accusing them, or preemptively withdraw or self-sabotage, leading directly to the very thing he feared in the first place.
His reaction isn't to the reality of the situation.
It's to a reflection in his mind. It's a ghost from his past. And this disconnection from reality, that is the pinnacle of irrationality.
So how do you learn to recognize this?
Yeah.
In yourself or in other people?
You look for behavior that is suddenly extreme. It's childish in its intensity, and it seems completely out of character for an adult. And it usually centers on those key deep emotions: fear of losing control, an extreme need for attention, or this pervasive anxiety about status.
That's a powerful tool for observation. But we also have to recognize the biases that keep us trapped in this cycle.
Yes, we have to talk about the pleasure principle in thinking.
Which is,
It's the mind's default state. It's designed to maintain our illusions and soothe our ego. Our thoughts naturally gravitate toward pleasure and the avoidance of cognitive pain.
so we recoil from facts or ideas that are unpleasant or complex.
Or that challenge our self-image. This mechanism is the source of all our mental biases.
Okay, so let's scrutinize a few of those. What are the big ones?
We have to zero in on 3 key biases that dominate our thinking. First, confirmation bias. This is the impulse to selectively search for, interpret, and favor information that supports what we already believe.
We don't want to find the truth. We want to confirm what we already feel is true.
Precisely. You see it in political echo chambers or in investment habits where people only follow news sources that validate their pre-existing optimism or pessimism. We perform these incredible intellectual gymnastics to justify what is, secretly, an emotional desire.
It's interesting. The truly rational person's first impulse is actually the opposite, isn't it?
It's the complete opposite. They're always searching for evidence that disconfirms their most cherished ideas. They want to pressure test their assumptions. That's how real breakthroughs happen.
Okay, what's the second bias?
The second is the conviction bias. And this one is particularly deceptive.
How so?
We believe an idea must be true simply because it brings out such great, vehement emotional energy in us. When we feel that powerful rush of certainty, we assume we've attained the truth.
But that feeling is misleading.
It's very misleading. That powerful energy often springs from a deep-seated insecurity about the idea itself. We hold on to an idea because it's pleasing to our ego, and deep down we suspect it might be flawed. So we overcompensate by contradicting anyone who challenges us, often loudly and aggressively.
And the third one?
Finally, the superiority bias. This is the universal optical illusion that we are inherently more rational, more ethical, more intelligent, and generally better drivers than the average person.
We wouldn't say that out loud, but
But consistently, when people are polled, they express some version of this belief. It's incredibly difficult to see our own faults and irrationalities because the ego works tirelessly to paint us as the hero of our own story. It makes us experts only in spotting the flaws of others.
So if the horse is dominating, how do we strengthen the rider? How do we break free from this irrational default state?
We look to the ancients, specifically to Pericles and the Athenian ideal.
The goddess Athena.
Pericles was devoted to Athena. She symbolized rationality, the highest gift granted to mortals, because it alone allowed humans to act with what resembled divine wisdom and clarity. He dedicated his life to cultivating this inner Athena, recognizing that emotions, they turn us inward away from reality. They cloud our judgment and our vision.
And his core strategy for doing this was incredibly simple, but also profoundly difficult to execute.
Yes, he trained himself never to react in the moment, never to make a crucial decision while under the influence of a powerful immediate emotion, especially anger.
So what did he do when he felt that anger bubble up?
He didn't suppress it immediately. Instead, he analyzed it under intense scrutiny. He would ask himself, why am I angry? Is this rage actually justified by the current facts, or is it being triggered by an old fear?
And often, when he looked closely,
The emotion would just lose its intensity. It would lose its significance. He saw that his immediate feelings were not truly justified by the present reality. And this process sometimes required him to wait days or even weeks for the emotional surge to completely subside before he would take action. He understood that time is the ally of rationality.
this raises a vital question for us then. How do we recognize sustained rationality? Because it's not about being perfect. It's about the pattern over time.
That's the key. Rationality is revealed in the long-term pattern of decisions. Rational people consistently demonstrate an ability to finish complex projects, to realize long-term goals, to work effectively with challenging teams. Crucially, they create something lasting and constructive.
And irrational people, conversely,
They reveal repeating negative patterns, constant mistakes, unnecessary conflicts that just keep happening over and over, dreams that are always started with great passion but are never realized because they're chronically emotional, reactive, and they jump from one path to the next.
let's break down that Pericles model into truly actionable strategies for the listener, a kind of mental script for achieving clarity.
Okay. First is the practice of constant self-questioning. When a powerful emotion surfaces, anger, sudden despair, overwhelming desire, you have to immediately put yourself under the microscope.
Ask why this sudden anger.
Where does this intense need for external validation come from? What earlier similar experience am I actually reacting to right now? This scrutiny is vital. By naming the source and demanding a rational explanation for a purely emotional surge, you cause the emotion to lose its primal, compelling grip.
And second, you have to create distance.
You must create distance to avoid immediate reaction. This is where the discipline comes in. You have to accept the premise that you are inherently susceptible to rising stress and emotional leakage. So you must physically or mentally find time and space to be alone, to reflect before you respond.
That could mean journaling after a triggering event.
Or taking a 24-hour cooling off period before sending an important email. Or simply walking away from a heated argument.
So the ability to resist the urge to react immediately. That's the mental muscle we have to strengthen.
That is the muscle. The longer you can resist reacting to what others are saying or doing, the stronger your mind becomes. And the more you focus on yourself, your goals, your strategy, rather than being drawn into the drama of others. The ultimate goal is to allow your higher rational impulse, which is naturally weaker and requires effort, to guide the immense energy of that emotional horse toward a productive path.
Okay, so if part one taught us about the internal war we're all fighting, part two is about recognizing that exact same war is raging inside of everyone else.
Unnecessary transition.
We're moving from the surface persona and the immediate impulse to the hidden architecture of character.
Exactly, because character isn't just what people say they are or what they wish they could be. It is the collection of deep, repeated, and often unconscious patterns.
Usually rooted in early life.
Typically rooted in early life attachments or traumatic experiences. And these patterns rise up automatically and steer a person's life even when they firmly believe they are choosing freely. We are compelled to repeat these patterns because the neurological pathways were laid down so early. They become a habit. They become a destiny.
Let's break down this idea of character layers, because it gives us a kind of forensic tool for assessing people.
Character is structured in neurological layers. The first and deepest layer is the early attachment quality. This is formed in our most sensitive and vulnerable years, our relationship with our parents or primary caregivers, and it has the greatest impact on how we handle stress and intimacy throughout our entire lives.
Give us an example of how that can manifest years later.
Certainly. If you look at children of dismissing parents, those who were emotionally distant or unavailable, those children often grow into adults who actively avoid dependency.
They might unconsciously push people away in their career or their personal life.
Right. They become fiercely, almost pathologically self-reliant. And conversely, children of enmeshed or overly anxious parents often experience great anxiety and ambivalence in relationships.
So they pursue intimacy, but then
But then they unconsciously retreat or sabotage the connection because deep down, they equate closeness with being smothered or controlled.
So that's the deepest root. What's the second layer built on top of that?
The second layer consists of the basic habits and strategies developed in youth for dealing with that specific attachment reality. How they sought pleasure, how they avoided pain, how they got what they needed.
And the final layer.
The third and final layer is the compensation layer. This develops in late childhood or adolescence. This is the sophisticated armor we all build to cover up our perceived flaws or weaknesses.
So if a person was fundamentally timid, but they recognize that timidity isn't respected socially, they might compensate by acting aggressively domineering.
Or excessively outgoing. And this layer makes it incredibly hard for outsiders to determine their true, quiet nature. And that is why we so often fail to recognize true character. We get distracted by surface qualities like high intelligence or professional polish or superficial charm.
But the crucial insight here is that intelligence or energy or charm, it's absolutely worthless if the person's character, their underlying compulsive pattern, is weak or unstable.
Or fundamentally dubious. You have to look beyond the resume.
So how do we identify these deep, compulsive patterns? What is the red flag we should be looking for?
You have to look for behavior that seems suddenly childish in its intensity. Behavior that appears completely out of character. This is the character stamp rising up to the surface.
Like an extreme need for total control.
Exactly. Or a compulsive checking of their phone or email. An almost frantic clinging to routine or certainty. This rigidity often signals a deep-seated anxiety where certainty once meant survival, and any threat to that routine triggers a massive emotional response.
The sources offer a perfect, if tragic, example of this compulsion overriding genius, Howard Hughes.
Hughes is a textbook case study in how childhood anxiety becomes an adult compulsion. His father was often absent, and his mother was obsessively protective and anxious about his health. So Hughes's character stamp was rooted in this early anxiety, leading him to desire absolute independence and total control over his environment.
And his early passion for flying reflected this, didn't it?
It did. Only at the helm, alone in the air, could he experience that exhilarating sensation of total risk-free control.
And this compulsion defined his entire leadership style later on.
It defined everything. In his businesses, he could not delegate. He had to keep control of all aspects, micromanaging tiny details, forcing everything, no matter how trivial, to flow through him. He hired a general manager for that massive Hercules project, promised him complete authority, and then vetoed every single major decision days later. He systematically undermined the manager's credibility.
The paradox is just tragic. By compulsively trying to gain total control over his projects, he ended up losing it.
He lost it completely because no single person, even a genius like Hughes, can possibly keep up with every minute detail of these massive, complex enterprises. His compulsive pattern of control led directly to chaos, failure, and isolation. It completely overshadowed his technical brilliance. This pattern of failure was not circumstantial. It was his character at work.
Okay, so we're moving from these conscious compulsive patterns to the truly unconscious self, the shadow.
Yes. We are fundamentally social animals, so we must repress thoughts, desires, and aggression that are socially unacceptable or frowned upon by the tribe. We like to imagine we are purely good, rational beings, but deep down, we are often ashamed of our animal roots.
We actively suppress this dark side because we fear the social stigma, the loss of status, the punishment of being exiled.
But this denial comes at a very high cost. Denying the shadow self, that part of us that holds our deepest insecurities, our secret desires to harm people, our hunger for unearned attention or power, it drains mental energy, it impairs genuine creativity, and it significantly reduces empathy because we're too busy performing saintliness.
And the danger is that this repressed aggression, it doesn't just vanish, it leaks out in baffling and often harmful ways.
But wait, isn't it good to repress aggression? I mean, if we just let those dark impulses out, wouldn't society just fall apart? Where's the line between healthy repression and destructive denial? That is the essential question. And the line is defined by awareness. Healthy management means scrutinizing the impulse, recognizing its source, and then channeling its energy productively. Destructive denial means pretending the impulse doesn't exist at all.
And when that denial is at play, the aggression leaks out.
It leaks out in 4 predictable ways.
Okay, let's start with the first one, accidental behavior.
Under extreme stress or exhaustion or intoxication, the carefully constructed mask slips. The real repressed self shows up, sometimes with shocking results.
A flash of verbal cruelty.
A disproportionate rage over a minor detail, or revealing a deeply cynical, hostile viewpoint that they normally keep completely suppressed. This is an accidental, temporary glimpse of the true character stamp.
Then there is accusation or projection. I feel like I see this one everywhere, especially in modern online discourse.
You do. When a person constantly accuses others of having negative traits, being manipulative, dishonest, power-hungry, it is often an unacknowledged reflection of their own traits.
So they can't tolerate these dark impulses within themselves.
So they project them outward. They see their own shadow impulses in others first. And this projection conveniently justifies their own hostile or reactive response. If I secretly want to manipulate people, I just assume everyone else is manipulating me, and then I can attack them first.
And what about the quieter, more insidious leakage? Self-sabotage.
This is that strange, almost inexplicable pattern where intelligent, talented individuals delay success, or they repeatedly miss deadlines, or they destroy opportunities just as they're approaching a breakthrough.
And this stems from deep-seated fears.
Yes. Perhaps the fear of standing out, the terror of judgment that comes with visibility, or the fear of the massive responsibility that success brings. They often appear perpetually busy and even seem saintly, always providing excuses and trying, but they fundamentally struggle to commit to that final step.
And finally, hidden aggression, the hallmark of passive aggression.
You have to be extremely wary of those who employ excessive charm and unnatural politeness. These are often pleaser types who secretly harbor a powerful, repressed desire to harm or undermine those they serve or envy.
Their hostility isn't overt. It leaks out as subtle, sabotage-missed messages, carefully delayed reports, or undermining others in private conversation. They only show their true, spiteful colors when they believe your guard is completely down.
So the transformation here is essential. You have to examine your own dark side.
That's the core of the strategy. We tend to blame external circumstances or other people for our recurring moods, our failures, our bad luck. But if the pattern keeps repeating, the source is internal. The transformation strategy requires conscious effort. You have to scrutinize the dark side and subject it to the light of your neocortex. Once that aggressive energy is consciously recognized, it loses its destructive, stealthy power.
And then you can channel it.
Then you can channel it.
Yeah.
You can turn your neediness and vulnerability into empathy, which is an outward-focused act. You can channel aggressive, competitive impulses into your work, admitting your ambitions and desires for power without acting so guiltily or stussily about it. Integrating the shadow makes you a more complete, resilient human being who radiates genuine authenticity, not a manufactured performance.
Okay, so we have to acknowledge an uncomfortable truth now. All humans are self-absorbed narcissists to some extent. We're social animals. We continually need attention, validation, reassurance. So where does functional self-love end and true toxicity begin?
It's all on a continuum. Narcissism exists on a spectrum. Most of us live above the halfway mark. We could call that the functional narcissist. We have successfully developed a coherent internal sense of self-esteem that we can rely on and draw love from. And this internal regulator prevents us from descending into pathological self-absorption.
But those who fall below the halfway mark, the deep narcissists, they present a very real, predictable danger.
They do, because they fundamentally lack that internal self-esteem device. They rely entirely on external validation like it's air. If they are not paid constant attention, they begin to doubt their very existence and can descend rapidly into depression or overwhelming rage.
And that pathology dictates all of their relationships.
It does. They view others not as independent entities, but as self-objects, as instruments for validation and attention. They feel entitled to control others as if they were controlling their own arm or leg. So in an intimate relationship, they might systematically isolate a partner from their friends and family because there can be no competition for the deep narcissist's focus. If you cease to validate them, you cease to exist for them.
And yet the paradox is that their charm is what allows them to gain influence so quickly.
Exactly. People like Joseph Stalin, who was a deep narcissist, could also be incredibly charming and gain followers rapidly. In the early stages of their careers, they possess this immense, focused ambition and energy, often driven by an even greater gnawing insecurity.
So Stalin's internal chaos, his paranoia, his extreme insecurity, his need for absolute control, that was paradoxically attractive to people.
It was. He projected this intense inner drama, which stirred parallel, deep emotions in the masses he led. It made him appear like an almost mythical figure of revolutionary purity. But as his power grew, the charm faded. He loved to control people utterly. He famously forced his inner circle to remain up all night, often dancing or humiliating themselves just for his amusement.
So his inner life mirrored his rule.
Completely. He created a massive cult of personality, speaking of himself in the third person as this impersonal, infallible force, all while denying his direct involvement in his own deification. And that inner chaos eventually manifested in the group he led. It wasn't just his personality, it became the personality of the Soviet state. Paranoid, ruthless, and highly controlling.
So the counter law to this, the cure for this destructive self-absorption, has to be empathy.
It is. Empathy is the deliberate mission to turn that powerful self-absorption outward. It is a profoundly therapeutic and liberating experience to be drawn outside of ourselves and into the world of another human being.
And to cultivate this, you have to train yourself to assume the other person's viewpoint.
As accurately as you possibly can. You use your imagination and analogous experiences. You have to continuously cycle between analysis, observing their character patterns, and empathy, imagining the world from their emotional perspective. It must be an active practice, constantly updating your observations.
That requires deep humility, doesn't it? I mean, you can never know exactly what people are thinking. They're always more complex than you imagine.
Humility is absolutely essential. The goal is simply to see their point of view better. Empathy functions as an instrument of emotional attunement. While it's hard to read a person's precise thoughts, feelings, and moods, anxiety, confidence, defensiveness are much easier to pick up through observation.
I think the Shackleton example from the sources really highlights why this is a survival skill, not just a soft skill.
Sir Ernest Shackleton, the great Antarctic explorer, he found himself trapped when his ship, the Endurance, was crushed by ice. He was marooned thousands of miles from civilization. And he realized very quickly that his biggest threat wasn't the weather, it was the men's morale. His survival and theirs depended entirely on his ability to read the moods and minds of his crew more closely than he read the navigational charts.
That's fascinating. He developed intense attunement out of necessity.
Yes, he spent hours talking to the scientists about science and to the more aesthetically minded crew members about poetry and art. He treated each man differently based on their specific psychology and emotional needs. He found these indirect ways to elevate their mood or quietly isolate potential malcontents before their negativity could spread. His necessity sharpened his focus and forced him to transform himself into a master empath. It proves that our success is often directly linked to our capacity to accurately read others.
And that's the perfect bridge. If narcissists show us the danger of relying on external validation, then we have to confront the fact that everyone relies on external presentation. So, part 3. We're moving into the social arena, addressing how people conceal their true intent, the mask, and how we can effectively influence others by reading their cues and lowering their inherent resistance.
Yes, we have to start by acknowledging the theatrical quality of life. The word personality itself comes from the Latin persona, which means mask. Wearing a carefully chosen mask is essential for smooth social functioning and for self-protection. The better you play your role, whether it's the competent professional, the dedicated family person, or the agreeable friend, the more power and acceptance you will accrue.
The trap, of course, is that we're all so easily fooled by the mask. We mistake appearance for reality. We are chronically prone to that halo effect we mentioned earlier. We see certain positive surface qualities in a person, say they're successful or attractive or well-spoken, and we automatically assume they must have other positive qualities that fit that narrative.
We assume they must also be ethical, conscientious, and reliable. And this assumption is lethal. It completely obscures the fact that many successful people achieve their positions precisely through morally dubious or ruthlessly strategic actions, which they cleverly disguise with the veneer of professionalism and benevolence. We look at a clean surface and we assume a clean interior.
So our task is twofold. First, accept the necessary theatrical quality of human interaction. And second, transform ourselves into master decoders. We have to become acutely alert to the subtle signs that leak out automatically, the ones that reveal the true emotion or intent beneath the performance.
And this decoding means always thinking in terms of opposites. If someone presents extreme, almost theatrical toughness, it usually covers a deep, profound insecurity. If someone is overly saintly or agreeable, they are likely suppressing aggressive or critical impulses. We must actively slow down, mistrust that initial easy judgment, and train ourselves to analytically search for the contrast between the stated personality and the underlying character stamp.
People are constantly leaking their true feelings and unconscious desires through nonverbal cues they simply cannot control.
Yes, vocal pitch, muscle tension, gestures, posture. If words are meant to conceal what people are thinking, then nonverbal cues reveal the subtext, the real desires, and true emotions. To miss this stream of information is to operate blindly. It's like listening to only half of the conversation.
This brings us to the profound lessons from Milton Erickson, the legendary hypnotherapist.
After suffering paralysis at age 17, Erickson was forced into a reclining chair, unable to move, but able to observe his family closely. He developed this hyper-acute sensory perception, and he recognized an entire second channel of human communication.
He realized that the nonverbal cues, the subtle changes in breathing, the quick glances, the way his sisters held their bodies, expressed something deep within them that they were often totally unaware of themselves.
His physical necessities sharpened his observational skills to a point that few of us ever achieve. His body, incapable of movement, became an instrument for reading other subtext. Erickson learned that the body does not lie, even when the person has carefully worked on their verbal performance or cultivated a perfect front. He realized that to master this language, he had to completely suppress his ego, stop thinking about what he wanted to say next, and direct 100% of his attention outward to the other person.
So let's get specific. What are the key nonverbal cues that betray hostile intent? We need a list of the leakage points.
Okay, look for dislike or hostility cues that are fleeting but powerful. These include sudden, brief eye rolls that are quickly covered by a smile, lips pressing tightly until they almost disappear, a classic sign of extreme tension or suppressed anger, or the body angling slightly away from you during a conversation, which signals an unconscious desire for distance.
And what about envy? That's a powerful hidden emotion.
Envy often manifests as a sudden, brief silence after the triggering comment, especially one concerning your success or your status. The person can't articulate the hostile feeling, so they involuntarily lapse into silence, often brooding internally, before they can force a polite response. Also, look for the micro-expression, that fleeting initial facial reaction when you surprise someone who harbors negative thoughts toward you before their affable mask can click back into place.
Now let's look at deception. How do we spot the too perfect front used by masterful deceivers?
The most sophisticated deceivers and fraudsters, people like Victor Lustig or Bernie Madoff, they often present themselves as an extremely competent, sometimes even slightly boring professional. They rely heavily on numbers, facts, complex terminology. They create an aura of such dryness and infallibility that suspicion seems rude or irrational.
So what then is the ultimate red flag in that manufactured perfection?
The red flag is the sheer manufactured quality of the appearance and the story. Reality is messy. Real-life projects include random interruptions, unexpected accidents, and moments of genuine confusion. If an explanation or a proposal seems too slick, too polished, or utterly flawless, if every piece fits too accurately, that should instantly raise your suspicion. Deception is often hard to notice because it involves a lack of genuine humanity and messiness to observe. You're looking for that quality of being manufactured, not discovered. On a more positive note, nonverbal cues are also crucial for gauging influence and engagement. Absolutely. The best signs that you're gaining influence are synchrony, the other person unconsciously mirroring your movements, their legs crossing in the same direction, their head tilting similarly, their posture subtly matching yours, and genuine crinkled eye smiles, frequent head nods, and an animated voice with a rising pitch all indicate high emotional arousal and a softening of resistance. Okay, so once we can read others, the next step is influence. The natural human default, especially when being pushed, is defensiveness. Yes. When others try to persuade or change us, we resist because it challenges our fundamental need to feel autonomous and independent. Direct force, like trying to impose restrictions on a rebellious teenager, almost always results in the opposite of the intended effect.
So the core strategy, proven by master influencers like Lyndon B. Johnson, is to work indirectly.
The paramount goal is to ensure people feel that what they are doing is entirely of their own free will and choice. Johnson never appeared aggressive or threatening in his initial appeals. He gained influence step by step, always couching his radical power grabs as a way to enhance the Democratic Party or to genuinely help individual senators achieve their local goals.
One powerful indirect technique is confirming self-opinion. Everyone operates with a high internal self-opinion built on these universal beliefs. I am autonomous, I am intelligent, I am a good person.
And you must appeal to those foundational beliefs. And beyond the universal, you appeal to their personalized self-opinions. I'm a free spirit, or I am self-reliant. Crucially, flattery works best if you praise qualities people are secretly uncertain about. For example, Cardinal Richelieu, one of the most brilliant French statesmen, had an intense, almost pathetic vanity about being a poet,
So those who flattered him skillfully spoke little of his statecraft.
which he knew he was excellent at, but they heaped extravagant praise on his often mediocre poetry. By allowing others to feel clever or free or noble for doing what you desire, you lower their most guarded defenses.
And the opposite side of that coin is to allay their insecurities.
Identify their specific areas of deep insecurity, their looks, their status, their creative powers, their intelligence, and be meticulously careful not to trigger them. The best approach is often to offer gentle, sincere reassurance in those specific areas. Lord Chesterfield, advising his son on how to influence the powerful, noted that if your targets are clever, obvious praise might backfire. But reassurance on a deeply held personal insecurity can melt their defenses instantly.
Finally, what about dealing with those exceptionally stubborn, resistant types?
For them, you do not counter their strong emotions. You move with them and you channel that energy in a productive direction. It's a form of jujitsu. Milton Erickson mastered this technique. He once dealt with a young boy who was rebelling fiercely against his school principal. Instead of arguing, Erickson told the boy, the best way to really annoy that principal is to show up late every day and slack off completely. You should just do the bare minimum, just enough to pass.
He devised the opposite of what he wanted.
Precisely. He appealed to the boy's ego and his desire to embarrass the authority figure. This subtle reverse psychology channeled the boy's resistant energy away from defiance and toward compliance, with the boy eventually studying harder and achieving more, believing he was succeeding on his own rebellious terms.
Moving into our final and perhaps most crucial section, strategic thinking. We have to contrast the short-sighted, impulsive nature that defines most people with the long-term, focused approach necessary for true, sustainable power and success.
And short-term thinking is hardwired into our system. Our brains evolved to respond to what is immediate, the instant danger, the flash of lightning, the opportunity for instant gratification. While this served our survival on the ancient savanna, it is profoundly ill-suited to the complex, hyper-connected modern world. This hardwiring causes us to focus obsessively on what stimulates our immediate senses and powerful emotions, causing us to miss the larger, slower, more meaningful picture.
The manifestations of this hardwiring are everywhere in modern life. The first is the react mode. We swing wildly from hyper-excitement to sheer panic at every dramatic piece of news or market fluctuation. We're driven by the 24-hour news cycle, constantly reacting.
Historically, the most vivid example is mass irrationality, like the South Sea bubble of 1720. Millions of educated investors, swept up in the lure of easy, instant money and unbridled optimism, ignored all historical warnings, convinced this time was different. They prioritized the immediate, thrilling possibility of wealth over fundamental economic reality, leading inevitably to panic and a catastrophic crash.
And we see this dynamic repeated today in sudden crypto booms or these flash-in-the-pan business models that prioritize rapid scaling over sustainable fundamentals.
A second manifestation is a persistent laziness and simplicity in our thinking. We desperately want to believe in the linear equation. Action A leads directly and easily to result B. We despise complexity and unintended consequences.
We fall for quick fixes without considering the perverse effects.
The classic example is the colonial official in India who offered a reward for every dead cobra brought in. The intention was to clear the dangerous snakes. The unintended consequence was that impoverished residents, seeing an opportunity for easy income, began breeding cobras to collect the reward, increasing the population of venomous snakes. We applied this simplicity daily in business and relationships, failing to anticipate the secondary and tertiary results of our actions.
And the third manifestation. Confusing importance with immediate detail, the high workload, low priority trap.
This is a classic management failure. Consider King Philip II of Spain. He had a prodigious appetite for paperwork and detail, often fussing over the placement of toilets in his new palace, or exactly how minor clergy should be addressed in letters. He spent so much mental energy on these immediate, low-priority details that he frequently ignored vital war reports, strategic intelligence, or macroeconomic trends. He believed he was in control by overseeing everything, but his mental fatigue and confusion led directly to disastrous naval defeats and the eventual decline of the Spanish Empire.
So the antidote must be patience and perspective. How do we cultivate them?
Patience is not a passive virtue. It is a mental muscle that must be actively strengthened by resisting reaction and intentionally creating space for reflection. The longer you can hold that tension, the longer you can resist the urge to immediately respond to a crisis, a slight, the stronger your strategic mind becomes.
The Lincoln model during the American Civil War serves as the ideal for this kind of far-sighted strategizing.
Yes. While others around him, his generals, the press, the public, swayed violently with every momentary swing of fortune, demanding quick battles or immediate negotiations, Abraham Lincoln maintained one steady, inflexible purpose: preserving the Union at all costs. He understood this would take time and endurance. He correctly gauged the relative strengths and weaknesses of the two sides, realizing the North had superior long-term resource advantages. He refused to give in to tactical pressure, providing the necessary model for grand strategy based on patient, long-term calculation.
If we were to implement this today, what's the practical tool?
You must create a rigorous ladder of priorities. Your neocortex has limits. Assimilating too much information leads inevitably to confusion and short-sighted reaction. This scale of priorities acts as a filter. It helps you resist engaging in tactical battles, petty arguments, fleeting media controversies, minor workplace dramas that are a demonstrable waste of your valuable energy. If a battle is truly important, detachment allows you to plot a strategic response. But most often you'll realize the noise just isn't worth the emotional or mental investment.
Okay, the law of covetousness. This addresses a fundamental, uncomfortable truth. Human nature is inherently discontent. The moment we possess something, our minds instantly drift towards something new, distant, or different.
The classic grass is always greener syndrome, and it has ancient, almost theological roots. Look at the earliest recorded example: the Hebrews during the Exodus. Freed from generations of slavery, they immediately grew nostalgic for the meager melons and meats of Egypt when faced with desert hardships. They found fault even with divine sustenance, the manna. Our minds are constantly wandering toward the idealized, the inaccessible, a better job, a more perfect relationship, a revolutionary shift, without acknowledging the potent illusions that cling to anything distant or unattainable.
And this realization is key to influence. If desire is about distance and illusion, then we have to understand the art of the absence to influence others.
There are three core strategies for creating and sustaining desire. First, strategic withdrawal. Do not be overly available, obvious, or accommodating. Your presence must always retain a touch of coldness or detachment, signaling that you could, if necessary, live without others. This psychological distance signals your worthiness of respect and unconsciously heightens your value in their eyes, making them chase after you.
Second, mystery and ambiguity.
Yes, never be too obvious or transparent about your opinions, your values, or your tastes. Allow others to project their own fantasies, hopes, and desires onto you. The most enduring, desirable figures, movie stars, certain public figures, are masters of this. Michael Jackson, particularly in his peak, managed this perfectly. He carefully spread out his album releases, managed his public appearances meticulously, and allowed rumors, like his supposed use of a hyperbaric chamber, to run wild without confirming or denying them. He made himself an object of perpetual ambiguity and thus continual desire and fantasy. Once the mystery is gone, the illusion dies.
And the third strategy deals with the social element of desire, rivalries of desire.
Human desire is profoundly social. We want what others want. If an object, a person, or a status is not desired by others, it often seems distasteful to us. This stems from our earliest competition with siblings for limited parental attention. By creating the illusion that the object of desire is rare, coveted, or highly sought after by rivals, you spark a powerful competitive chain reaction. When you show that other people desire something you possess, its value skyrockets both in your eyes and theirs.
Here's where strategy meets self-sabotage, the grandiosity trap. This inflated, absolute sense of self-importance and certainty that convinces a person that normal rules don't apply to them.
And while a necessary degree of confidence is vital for conceiving and pursuing big dreams, unchecked grandiosity blinds one to reality and critical input. It often roots in childhood, either through excessive, unwarranted praise, or as a sophisticated compensatory armor against deep feelings of insignificance. The grandiose self must be constantly fed with admiration. If that admiration stops, the deep insecurity quickly creeps back in, When success arrives, they feel invincible. When failure strikes, the crash is total and devastating.
The ultimate danger here is what the sources call the Napoleon trap.
Yes, Napoleon's early, brilliant success was built on a team of advisors who were brilliant, independent thinkers who consistently challenged him, keeping him grounded in reality. But once he reached the pinnacle of power, he only listened to sycophants, people who agreed with everything he said and fed his sense of infallibility. He began to ignore ground realities, critical analysis, and the warnings of his marshals, leading him to overextend resources disastrously, particularly in the Russian campaign, which ultimately caused his downfall.
So the danger is not just that grandiosity leads to bad decisions, but that it leads to self-isolation, surrounding oneself with echoes rather than truth.
It leads to a predictable pattern of self-sabotage,
Hmm.
overextending resources, ignoring critical analysis, and becoming emotionally volatile because any criticism is perceived as an existential threat. The strategy to counter this must be constant, rigorous self-reflection. Am I operating on reality right now, or is this decision being driven by ego-driven fantasy and my need to prove myself?
So we need to channel that powerful ambition not into short-term validation, but into constructive discipline.
Exactly. This means deliberately creating step-by-step plans, taking calculated, measured risks rather than reckless gambles, and prioritizing long-term endurance and quality of work over immediate fame or praise. A humble attitude, the act of seeking out of critical perspectives, and a willingness to acknowledge error are essential practices for staying firmly grounded in reality.
Okay, the final strategic law we cover today is gender rigidity.
This is a weakness imposed by social pressure. Society often forces us to suppress essential parts of our nature by compelling us to adopt only one set of traits, either strictly masculine or strictly feminine. Boys are told not to cry or show vulnerability. Girls are often told to be soft, agreeable, and non-assertive.
And this rigidity is a profound weakness because it limits your adaptability. If you're forced to be tough all the time, you miss opportunities for diplomacy or compassion. If you're forced to be agreeable all the time, you can't be decisive when a crisis demands it.
The ideal, the integrated human, achieves true power and resilience through flexibility. This person has access to the full spectrum of human qualities as needed. The integrated person can be strong in a crisis, yet gentle in love, decisive and tender, logical and intuitive. They can express anger without losing control and display vulnerability without collapsing.
By suppressing the shadow traits associated with the opposite gender, for example, a man suppressing vulnerability or a woman suppressing aggression and ambition, you not only drain immense mental energy performing a rigid role, but you also become fundamentally less adaptable.
The strategy, therefore, is self-transformation. Identify the traits you were forced to suppress: vulnerability, assertiveness, softness, ambition, dependency, and then actively experiment with embracing the opposite qualities in safe spaces. Practice vulnerability with a trusted friend, or practice firmness and leadership if you are normally soft-spoken. By working to develop flexibility in your character, you shake yourself free from being a passive slave to the character template created by your earliest, most limiting years.
We've covered vast ground today. We started with the fundamental code, the idea that predictable elemental forces drive all human behavior. We learned how to become calmer, strategic observers by recognizing irrationality, identifying our biases, and adopting that Pericles model of non-reaction.
We decoded character, examining compulsive patterns, understanding the necessity of the shadow self, and learning to transform self-love into outward-focused empathy. We saw how crucial it is to read people's true feelings, not just their masks, by mastering the second language of nonverbal cues, and how to use indirect influence to overcome human defensiveness.
And finally, we looked at grand strategy. Rejecting short-sightedness for the far-sighted perspective of Lincoln, mastering the art of absence to control desire, deliberately avoiding the Napoleon trap of grandiosity, and achieving true internal strength through the integration of all human qualities.
The knowledge of these laws doesn't lead to perfection. It leads to freedom. Freedom from being a passive victim of your own nature and the chaos of others. It allows you to break your own toxic patterns of self-sabotage, the cycles of fear and reaction, and consciously shape your destiny by acting on reality, not on emotional reflection. At the end of the day, the ultimate, most durable thing you should truly covet is a deeper, more brutal relationship with reality itself.
So let's leave you, the listener, with a final provocative challenge. You now know that everyone wears a mask, that emotional contagion is powerful, and that loyalty is often conditional. Ask yourself this. What if the people you trust most, family, trusted colleagues, closest friends, are unknowingly shifting your decisions? their own hidden desires and anxieties infecting your choices right now without either of you realizing it. And furthermore, are you so used to the masks you wear, the competent professional, the perfect parent, the agreeable friend, that you have forgotten what your real, unfiltered face looks like underneath before society stepped in? Think about that. The only thing stopping you from seeing the world clearly might just be the comfort of your own most convenient illusions.